Yeah, we can go in slide mode. Are you in a slide mode?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Can you bring it up? And I don't see any slides now. I can open mine. I think, yeah. Okay. So we can, this need not to be a formal one. I put together, 20 slides, and the objective is not going through these slides, and but I wanted to share the knowledge whatever we have gained, and share it with our fresh students who are coming out of the college, and explain to them like what are the career opportunities are available, what is a cloud service, and all about it. So little intro, I'm part we were the first batch student, I was from ECE. We joined National Engineering College 1984 and passed out in 88. So we were the part of first batch, came out of National Engineering College. Okay, and you know I I have been working in cloud technologies for about 7 years, last 7 years, and I have worked in various other fields. And I'm natively from Nagarkoil. I studied throughout from first standard to 12th grade in Tamil medium. So if anybody studied in Tamil medium, and they do they have any barrier? I don't think so. So there's no barrier for the success, so you can do better in your career. And let's get started. So that's a small intro, and just move on to the next slide, the next one. Yeah. So cloud services, what is a cloud service, right? I think everybody have at least some knowledge about cloud service nowadays, right? And but however, I wanted to, explain what are the different cloud offerings or cloud services available. Let's understand. So previously, before cloud service, what happened? The everything was running on-prem. On-prem meaning you have a lab kind of a setup, and you all the enterprises, they house all their servers inside, and now these services are moved to cloud. So cloud is by definition, right? Cloud services are application and infrastructure resources that exist on the internet, and third-party providers, they provide these different services, computer services, storage, or there are more than 200 services available with each cloud provider. So the major cloud providers we all know, right? Amazon, Google, Azure, Microsoft, right? And there's various cloud providers across the world. There are some Chinese companies. They are also offering cloud services. And so cloud services in general fits into these three categories, right? If you look at IaaS, PaaS, and SaaS, what is IaaS and what is PaaS? Let's look at it and understand it a little bit better, right? IaaS is infrastructure as a service, and PaaS is platform as a service, and then SaaS is a software as a service. So IAS has got different characteristics, the responsibility for IAS is different than the PaaS. There are different layers. We all know there are 7 layers of, like any application or network, everything put together. They divide the services into 7 layers, and there are 7 different responsibilities. Who will be managing these responsibility different layers, right? That determines the nature of the service. So if you Simple service, IaaS. What is IaaS? Simple service is a VM on the cloud, right? Virtual machine on the cloud, where you have it's like our laptop, right? You can install what we you can select a particular operating system and install whatever application you need and use. You have full control on the when it comes to IaaS. The cloud provider have very little contribution. They provide a virtualized machine. That's all they do in IaaS. But when it comes to PaaS, there are different one layer above, right? Platform as a service. They create the application and they maintain it, and it is they provide certain services like, for example, BigQuery or analytical services. All that comes under platform or EMR or advanced the big data computing. All that falls under PaaS category. And then the SaaS providers like CRM, the Snowflake. They are the enterprise application. They completely control all the layers except the data layer, which is controlled by the end customer, right? So that's the cloud services by domain in a nutshell. And do you like, this to be an interactive session? Do we keep, I like to answer questions like, do you want to ask questions at the end, or if you have any questions during the, during the presentation, you can ask, it can be a more of interactive, practical session rather than me running through the certain slides. Okay. Um, is there any questions you have on the cloud service domain? We can move on to the next one. Advantages of cloud computing, right? What are the advantages? Right, it has a faster time to market, right? And then the low maintenance, cost effective pricing, and the infinite storage is not so, practically speaking. Previously, when we are working with the client, if we are if you wanted to set up any application, they need to procure the hardware, they need to set it up. It all takes about 2 3 months, but nowadays it happens in 2 3 days, right? That's the change, right? Because of the cloud, they can provision it very quickly, and they can upscale and downscale. The scalability is the very good advantage. So you may be uh, seeing all these chat gpt and big data processing. All these cloud computing enable scalable data process, right? The scalability has increased tremendously, which is because of cloud computing. So that's a major advantage, and it also offers cost efficiency in terms of when you want to use it, you use it. Otherwise, you shut down, or there is some auto scale features available for all the services. So like if your load is only for 2 hours in 24 hours, you can run maximum capacity during that period, and then you don't need to run the full capacity, so many thousands of nodes in one time, right? And you can bring it down. So that kind of a flexibility is there. But if you compare it with the previous model of uh, the on-prem model, there is no way you could do that, right? You have to buy the entire hardware, you're always provisioned for the maximum capacity. These are the major advantages of the cloud computing, right? Okay. uh, yeah, who's responsible for managing different layers of services within the cloud. So cloud have different, layers, right? And there are different services available, as I said before, like infrastructure as a service and PaaS and SaaS, and there are some more variations, right? And it depends on the service provider. People are everybody is offering function as a service and the container as a service. Container, um, EKG, the Kubernetes container services is commonly used. Everybody moves from the old architecture to new architecture using container services. So now you in this slide, what you're seeing is the customer, who what are they managing, and the cloud provider, what are they managing, right? In terms of, when we go through one by one, let's go through one by one. Traditional customer is responsible for all the seven layer: hardware, virtualization, OS, runtime, scaling, application code, data, and configuration. They are completely responsible for it. And when you move up the ladder, like infrastructure as a service, so virtualization and hardware goes to the cloud provider. Cloud providers or the public cloud providers. Remaining things stay with the project team or the client. They are responsible for maintaining runtime and the application code and all other layers of service, right? And the container OS is responsibility of the cloud provider, right? Remaining things you are managing it. Meaning the client is managing it. Platform as a service, the runtime and OS is also part of a cloud provider's responsibility. And function as a service, the scaling goes to the provider, and when it goes to SaaS, everything else apart from the data and configuration, you are only responsible for data and how to secure the data visibility. Those things are only your responsibility. All other things is taken care by the provider, like maintenance of hardware, maintenance of software upgrades, and and the other environment, virtualization, everything, scalability, everything is taken care by the SaaS provider. So, any questions around this one? Okay, let's move on. What are the different cloud models, deployment models, right? There are there are four categories: public cloud, private cloud, hybrid cloud, and multi-cloud. The public cloud is the general offering from the Amazon, Google, and Azure. They provide, and public can use it directly, and any individual can procure it. So need not to be an organization. Anybody can start using public cloud. Private cloud is a form of cloud computing that is used only by organizations that are ensures that completely isolated from the other public cloud hardware. So there are certain regulatory rules that doesn't allow them to use the public cloud. For example, federal government, or some financial transaction finance companies, they have certain applications which can run only in a private cloud. So in those use cases, they go for private cloud where the hardware isolation is there. So, like it is virtualized, but the virtualized inside your hardware, not with the all other, not like a public cloud. So that's extra layer of security you get. Hybrid is both, like a private and public clouds put together. They run it, and it depends on, most of the companies, even the pharma companies, they have hybrid cloud because they use public cloud for certain applications, non-sensitive application, but R&D applications and other sensitive applications, they use the private cloud, and which is set up probably, like it can be set up inside their data centers. And so there, I have seen pharma companies using hybrid cloud and multi-cloud. Multi-cloud is where you don't need to confine, need to be sticking with one cloud provider. Nowadays people start using multiple cloud providers. Like for example, they may like one service from one cloud provider, and the other one from the other service provider, right? From analytics from one, and from the like AIML from another company, or the language models from another company. So there are reasons for having a multi-cloud. So multi-cloud is getting popular now. Previously it used to be one enterprise, one cloud provider, but nowadays that's not the case. Multi-cloud, everybody uses, most of the companies uses multiple cloud technologies. Okay, we can move on to the next slide. So this is, yeah, we are going to look at, like what are the career opportunities. That is what I think is interest to our students, right? And the career opportunities are there for, like they can work as a cloud engineer, like at the beginning, freshers, they can start as a cloud engineer, and then in a couple of years they can become a cloud architect. And there are various other roles also, like if you look at the database engineer, cloud security engineer, network engineer, and DevOps engineer. These are the different roles, and different certifications are available with the like different cloud providers. So I took this example from like Google Cloud. And so Google Cloud have six level of certifications, and mostly like once once you become a cloud engineer, then you can learn the other topics, or you get an overview of cloud services when you learn cloud engineering. And then you can select, or you can specialize um, in, for example, DevOps. So I'm part of a project right now, and we're working for AstraZeneca migration, like it's a Snowflake on in AWS, and we are migrating from like Hive to Snowflake. And we have 100 people working from offshore. So they then we the out of 100 people, if you see, like we have a DevOps engineer, we have a cloud engineer, we have like all these different roles people are playing. And so there is a based on your interest, you can pursue uh, any uh, any one of these options. Yeah. Let's move on to the next one. So in the subsequent slides, what I'm going to share is here, like what are the general terminologies, general things you need to know in each category, right? And that's we'll look at that. And then like I don't want to rush through this, and rather than people start asking questions, and I would we can keep it for till the end. Maybe people are familiar with all these things. That's possibility. We can go into other practical question answer sessions. That's also a possibility. And we're already delayed by I think by 15-20 minutes, right? That's fine. Okay, can you move on to the next? Okay, this is cloud architect, right? General, what are the cloud architect related? Uh, if you are prepared, if you want to prepare, or what you need to know about cloud architecture. So we have, like there are several areas. I'm a couple of slides I'm going to talk about. Like here we'll let's understand the what are the compute services available, right? What is how the compute engine, and how do we run a virtual machine on a any in Google infrastructure, or what is the app engine, what is a cloud run, what is a cloud function. So these are all the things we need to know, and how to manage auto scaling, and different characteristics of cloud compute related things we need to learn about. And the other thing is about, how do you structure your project? What is availability zone? So the regions and availability zone are the major concepts within the cloud compute, right? And so, for example, region, there is here in mostly in US, we have, like East and West, two regions we have, but we have, different availability zones within a given region. There may be a, like availability zone, like there are multiple data centers within availability zones. uh, like in Bombay, Southeast Asia is one region, and Bombay is one availability zone. So the availability zones, they can, switch over, or first your traffic goes there. In case of any failure in the first availability zone, it can be routed to the second availability zone within the region. So those are all the things, like, and how do you set up your projects, how do you set up the organization inside for the access management, and also keeping all the objects and the different services running inside your cloud account. All those things are required, like you need to know. Can we move on to the next slide? Next one is about the network. Yeah, networking. So the networking is the majority of the thing is like about VPN setup, VPC setup, like right, virtual private network, right? And that is what controls the access. It is like a you have, for example, our NEC network. Same way in virtually, this is creating a private network virtually. So nobody else can access. It's like establishing a compound wall, and then allowing, setting a rule, firewall rules, to allow certain people to enter, certain traffic go out, and with the gate. So that's the analogy we can directly relate to. So VPC setup, right? Virtual private. Um, VPC peering. What is VPC peering? VPC peering is connecting two VPCs or three VPCs. Like you have, for example, we have NEC, we have REC, we have different college campuses. They have different networks. They have one network for each, and for Anna University campus connecting to NEC. That's, one example. Or in other practical examples are VPCs run, like in Europe, the multinational companies, they have one VPC in Europe, one in America, one in Southeast Asia. They, because, like each one have a different data uh, privacy rules, right? So VPC peering can control the, like enable connectivity, meantime enable the data privacy also. So those are all the, and there are the other topics, like are related to the networking. And if you want to be a network engineer, then you need to understand how do we connect, what is a dedicated interconnect, the dedicated partner connect, how do we dynamically route, and what is CDN. All these like the terminologies we need to understand, and be able to use it whenever is required, right? All what I am doing is we are recommending services to the client, and I'm as a tech lead, I'm helping to architect this system. And this project where I'm working for last 1 year, with 100 people in my project, previous project with Verizon, about 250 people from offshore. And we are what the role is that guiding them in technical aspects, and helping them navigate, select different rules, ask them to follow the best practices, and those are all the main important roles. What do I play in nowadays, right? That's a with reference to my role in the cloud services world. Yeah. Can we go on to the next one? Okay, DevOps and data analytics. This is also, like a big data analytics. Data analytics, they that's the majority of the services. Most of the client, they come to, cloud for, even though there are other services, but they often use big data services, right? Like a BigQuery and the data flow, data prep. All these things enables you to prep the data, present the data, analyze the data, and run your models, and then uh, like get the results faster. And also, I think I have a slide at the end to show how the different, how the data science use case is architected in within the Google Cloud platform, how they put together different services in to work, and in a synchronized way, right? So DevOps is again, if you want to know, but there is a role for DevOps engineer, right? And you need to know what is cloud, how do we build the cloud infrastructure, and how do we create those YAML files, container registry, how do you push your Dockers to container registry, how do you use Jenkins and to do automation and CI/CD, all that you should be learning detail in DevOps. And so uh, okay, let's move on to the next slide, please. AI, ML, and Kubernetes, right? And so the AI, ML models, they run it, and like a TensorFlow, for example, right? It's a enterprise scale AML model which can be run on cloud, and they different. There are, I put a few examples here. There are so much you can do with AI and ML. And nowadays, the language models, different providers, they have language models. And the challenge what we are seeing is people, highly secured companies, they don't want to use the publicly available, uh, for example, ChatGPT. They don't want to use directly the ChatGPT, but they wanted to use it in a private setup. Why they don't want to use the AML, or the ChatGPT, or other language models in public? Because they, they don't want to send information. For example, Apple, they don't want to send information to the public that this is what we are working on next, because there are people who are tracking those. So the implementation of the language models are going to be different, and they wanted to have a private setup. They wanted to use the language models, but it will be enabled in, like we saw the different deployment, right? It will be in a private cloud setup. There will be a connection established, but most of the language models they use in R&D, pharma R&D, because pharma companies, they don't want to reveal what they are working on, or they, the high tech companies, they don't want to share anything outside with the competition. So that's why, they don't use based on the severity of the application or sensitivity of the application, they can use, if it is very less sensitive, the publicly available, language models. Other than that, they would like to run it in a private setup. And even the data, they wanted to train their models using the, using their own data, not the data provided by somebody else. And so it becomes language model developed and fine-tuned based on their data and based on addressing their product questions and their use cases. So that's little different than the public, what we see, where, what we the use cases are different here, right? Public and private use cases, private enterprise use cases are different. And when it comes to, okay, we talked about AI, ML, and Kubernetes is, yeah, GKE. Kubernetes clusters are, as I said, microservices start using, GKE, and the Kubernetes cluster is where they deploy the Dockers, and the Dockers are something like a small computer bundled together with the application. It is deployed on the GKE. So that's how the Kubernetes works. And there are some, deployment related. How do you bundle together your, for example, in our use case, okay, we bundle together all the Python codes, all the other libraries in a Docker image and push it to a container registry, and then send it to the cluster. And so there are several things in any cluster. It's not one application running. There are several operations running, um, with the various different packages, different libraries, different components running in within each Docker, right? Dockers are not identical. You can run an identical Docker, you can run a different Dockers for different use cases. So that's the that's, if you want to become a cloud architect, you need to learn about the Kubernetes, AIML. Yeah. Can we move on to the next slide, please? Yeah, security. Uh, Security firewalls set up, and there are other securities, right? MFA, the customer managed keys, data keys, privacy settings, all that falls under security. And how do you manage it? That is a chapter on its own, right? Security is a chapter on its own. I think I have few more slides on the security. We'll go there when we uh, because if you want to specialize in security, there are a little more detail you need to know about all other cloud tools used for penetration testing, and the vulnerability testing. All the different tests happens around security area. The other topics are, how do you establish the cloud storage? What type of storages are there? What are the life cycle policies? How do you set up a data retention rule and all that? Data movement cost money in cloud storage, because and you need to manage that. So those are the additional topics people like to explore, and it's part of a cloud architect role. And let's move on to the next slide, please. Yeah, data engineer. So data engineer, database engineer, right? And database engineer is like, yeah, what do I specialize on? I specialize on, as a database engineer, look at specifically about the database services. What are the different database services available within a cloud provider? Oh, there's a, so in case of Google Cloud, there is a big data, big table, big query, Cloud SQL. There's so many, variations of databases. like a NoSQL databases, right? Big Table is a NoSQL database. There are other databases which is used for analytical purposes only. There are the SQL, the managed cloud SQL, the first one, like which is used for capturing any transactional data, right? So depends on the use case whether it is a transaction data or it's a analytical data or it is like NoSQL information or it's structured versus unstructured. So the various like data services are available, and each one have its own uh, pros and cons. So your role as a database engineer is to select appropriate cloud database service for your customer, right? So that's the role of a database engineer, and managing it, like managing it meaning like you implement, you enable the service. As soon as you enable, then how do you organize it, different structure, right? Whether you created one schema or multiple schemas, how do you manage access policy for different schemas, and how do you allow interaction with the other things. So many all these are all comes under management, right? So database engineer, DBA in our current, I know in our previous this one we call DBA, database administration administrators. Same role is called database engineer within the cloud. Okay, next one, please. Yeah, some additional information like yeah, data stream, data flow, data scheduler, data cloud composer. Cloud composer is nothing but like what, how do you organize or orchestrate different execution, right? Different job execution, right? And those are that's a role of a cloud composer. And like so as a database engineer, it's cloud composer works on a Python. This one, you develop a Python code and you can uh, enable run it in the cloud composer. And there are different other services related to um, database, right? Data stream services like Kafka services, or pub sub services, meaning publish and subscribe. Those models, those are all used for streaming. And there are other data cloud scheduler. We saw that cloud scheduler and cloud composer, they're almost the same, but with the minor differences. So if you are looking for like a database engineer role, then you need to know a little bit more on the database side and its services and how do we manage those services. Let's move on to the next one. Cloud security engineer. Okay, this is another role where like you are specializing on cloud security. And what is a cloud security? Like you have identity manager. How do we set up MFA, IAM policies, and like a proxy setup? And you need to know the cloud security model, right? And when uh, how do we allocate different resources within the cloud? For example, GCP in this case, right? And how do we set up projects, folders, organization permissions levels, and all that? And federation, AD integration. How do you integrate with your local AD? Active directories, like most often they have the cloud also have active directory, cloud active directories. Like active directories are the place where you maintain like a master copy of your access and identification and authentication credentials are maintained within the active directory, right? So how do we enable single sign-on, how do we enable the federation, and so how do we manage different secure service accounts. All that falls under the security engineer role. Okay. Yeah, move on to next one, please. Yeah, I think we discussed about this one, the VPC peering, VPN setup, dedicated interconnect. So anything related to connectivity, how do we set up the whole VPC? All that belongs to the cloud security engineer, because they are the one who manages the whole, like firewall or the compound for your network, right? You who comes in, who goes out, that's the key, that to avoid any external attack. And you are deciding what type of connection based on the bandwidth you need to connect to your enterprise customers, and also the to the outside world, what type of internet connection, how quickly you need to allow, you need to, the various bandwidths are available. So if you see here, right, dedicated connection provides low latency connection, 10 GB or higher bandwidth can be obtained from that. So the other partnered connect is only up to 50 MB. So it all depends on the customer need. If they have a different smaller need, then they can go for a partner interconnect, and just like getting a line from, it's a shared line from your local provider like a Airtel, or in India like a um, Geo, right? And they are the partners. They provide partner connect. Here there are different providers like Verizon or AT&T, and there are different providers. So cloud security engineer role is that to monitor and secure the whole uh, cloud services running within an VPC, right? So that's a role of cloud security engineer. Uh, Move on to the next one. Okay, DevOps engineer. So DevOps engineer, I think we saw the role of a DevOps engineer, right? And the DevOps engineer is managing the CI/CD cycle, and like the advantages that you can deploy in one given day. You can deploy multiple times if you follow the CI/CD process. So the DevOps engineer should know about how to manage the Git repo, right? How do we create multiple repos? Is it one schema, or one repo per schema? All that organization of repo. The repo is the place where you keep all the codes, right? You have different code developed, and you keep those source codes in the repository, and then you push that around to different branches, right? From development you have a one kind of a policy, and then when it comes to QA, when it comes to production, the policies are different. And um, the managing the DevOps policy, CI/CD framework, and enabling the different services using Terraform. Terraform, you can you can enable infrastructure services using a code, right? And you create a code, one time code, and then you can run that code to create that similar infrastructure within like a few minutes. So it comes up with the same libraries, same thing, and same similar setup within a within fraction of seconds. Your machine will be ready. That's where you use infrastructure code as a code. And need to know about JSON triggers, artifacts, YAML. How do we manage YAML files? And these are the Jenkins. These are the sub components of DevOps. And if you are already, if you know about this one, it becomes easy. Or otherwise, if you want to become a DevOps engineer, we have in offshore, we have a specific role called DevOps engineer. They specialize on these topics. So go to more next one. I think DevOps life cycle. We talked about DevOps life cycle, right? So the DevOps life cycle goes like, yeah, where do we use it? Like developer team, they do develop in the development environment. They check in the code and which triggers, and there are different version control and different commit stages, right? And the code moves on. Once it is approved, then moves on to QA, and then different approval processes, feedback processes are involved in the the whole DevOps cycle. And finally, you put the code with the client approval in production, right? You up to QA, we can manage it the within the development team, like uh, in our case, like the any technical team, they manage within the QA. Then, but if you are impacting production, we go to the client for approval. So the final approval needs to be from client to before you deploy the code in production. So that's a DevOps cycle. Let's move on to the next one. And this is yeah, the last one is about the data science use case on the Google Cloud. And you bring up the last slide, please.
Just a moment, sir. We're facing internet connectivity issue.
Oh, okay, no problem. So let me. So the last slide is about like how do we learned about different components running in like in cloud, right? Like for example, data warehouse components like BigQuery, or machine learning components like services like Vertex AI, or prediction like infrastructure like GKE, Kubernetes, or Data Studio. There are several things. So customers bring in data, they ingest the data through the cloud storage or pops up, and then like do the massaging, like do ETL, or like data preparation, and then populate the like underlying data warehouse, and then you run all your queries on top of it, or run the models on top of it. There are, so based on the different use cases, the different databases are available, right? And we saw that under the databases like relational DB, NoSQL DB, and BigQuery, and certain nowadays now the language models. These all these things are put together in an architecture, and the solution is we deliver the whole end-to-end solution and take care of interconnectivity between these services, managing different like different services. And there are some technical challenges we face time to time, all those things which we find solutions and address it based on the like based on the situation. So that's the like one use case. There are thousands of use case you can build using, you can start innovating in cloud services. So I would like to stop here. And we can get into a question if people have posted, or if they wanted to talk about any questions on the cloud services and opportunity. I'm open, like. And in case if you need any other help, I have in the last slide I have provided my email address and my WhatsApp number. Please feel free to reach out to me, and in case if you need any help on any particular topic on the cloud. Okay, I'm happy to help you guys. Okay. Any questions or anything? Not necessary to this whatever I explained. Any, do you have anything in your any questions around cloud? What do you think? Are you doing any projects related to cloud, or what is your career goals? And is there any questions? And I'm happy to help here. Maybe for, do we have time? There is no other next meeting scheduled, right? And we have, I think, 32 people on the call. And if there are any other, yeah, go ahead, Aishwarya, please.
Sir,
Ah, சொல்லுங்க.
can you explain what is Kubernetes?
Oh, what is Kubernetes, right?
Uh, yes, sir.
Okay, okay. So Kubernetes, like okay. Kubernetes வந்து ஸோ ஒரு விஎம் இருக்குது இல்லையா? விஎம்னா தெரியுமா உங்களுக்கு? ஸோ ஒரு நம்முடைய லேப்டாப் இருக்கு. எல்லாருக்கும் தெரியும் கம்ப்யூட்டர். நான் தமிழ்லயே பேசுறேன். And laptop தெரியும். And if you split that laptop into like 4 or 5 pieces, okay, logically you split that laptop into multiple pieces of then it becomes a virtualization. What is virtualization? One computer, they are doing it, splitting that logically into multiple virtualized machines, right? And so now that is that's the virtualization is the basic concept in cloud computing. And in Kubernetes, it's further divided. One virtual machine is further divided into smaller components. Like ஒரு நான் சொன்னேன் இல்லையா, ஒரு லேப்டாப் இருக்குது. லேப்டாப்பை ஒரு 10 டிவைட் பண்றோம். யூ கெட், ஒரு எக்ஸாம்பிளுக்கு சொல்றேன். It depends on the CPU capacity and CPU type and memory type attached to it. I'm just giving you some, okay, one laptop I'm dividing into, or one computer I'm dividing into eight VMs, and 8 VMs. In one VM I can have multiple uh, I can install a Kubernetes cluster in one VM, and run multiple Dockers. So Dockers is like it's a further division of what do you call the one more layer of virtualization, I would say. So இப்போ என்ன பண்றோம், டாக்கருக்கு ஒரு எக்ஸாம்பிள் சொல்லணும்னா, லைக் ஒரு அப்ளிகேஷன் இருக்குது. அதில் வந்து நீங்கள் பேங்கிங் அப்ளிகேஷன் எடுத்துக்கோங்க. எடுத்துக்கிட்டீங்கன்னா ஒரு லாகின் பார்ட் ஒன்று இருக்குது. You need to provide your login, right, credentials. Then you go into the account summary or account detail. உங்களுடைய பழைய டீட்டெயில்லாம் எவ்வளோ டிரான்சாக்ஷன் நடந்திருக்குலாம் பார்க்கணும். There are, in any application, there are ஒரு நாலஞ்சு இல்லை, there are uh, several types of things are put together to form an application. Banking application, application siteலயே போனீங்கன்னா தெரியும். ஐசிஐசியில் போனீங்கன்னா, HDFC போனீங்கன்னா, there are several things put together in one portal, right? And in that, what I am doing is I am creating one process for validating your credential only. For example, credentialனா தெரியும் இல்லையா, யூசர் நேம், லாக், பாஸ்வேர்ட், அதுக்கு மட்டும் உள்ளதை நான் பண்டில் பண்ணி அதை ஒரு இமேஜா கிரியேட் பண்றேன். அத்தன்டிகேஷன் மட்டும் வெரிஃபை பண்றதுக்கு என்ன பண்ணோம், இட் நீட்ஸ் டு கேப்சர் யூசர் நேம், பாஸ்வேர்ட், and it needs to send it to the securely to another main server and get the validation key, right? This is what the authentication is doing. Nothing else, nothing to do with your உங்கள் அக்கௌண்ட்டில் என்ன இருக்குது அதுக்கெல்லாம் அந்த அந்த ஆப்ரேஷனுக்கு தேவையில்லை. ஸோ யூ ஆர் டிவைடிங் தி என்டையர் ஆப்ரேஷன் இன்டு ஸ்மாலர் மைக்ரோ சர்வீஸ், ரைட்? Whole enterprise into a smaller microservice operations, and then you are deploying that in a smaller setup. You don't need a VM to deploy that because it does not need ஒரு அந்த அந்த அப்ளிகேஷன் வந்து லைக் அத்தன்டிகேஷனுக்கு வந்து மேனேஜ் பண்ணுறது ஈஸியாக இருக்கும். யூ கேன் ரன் ஒரு ஒரு 100 அத்தன்டிகேஷன் அண்ட் பட் டேட்டா சர்வீசஸில் ஒரு 1000 டேட்டா தி டாக்கர்ஸ் அண்ட் பேஸ்ட் ஆன் லைக் ஒவ்வொரு கேட்டகரியிலையும் வந்து டிஃப்ரெண்ட் டாக்கர்ஸை ரன் பண்ணலாம். மீனிங் யூ கேன் ரன் you will have a better management when you break down the entire application into smaller pieces. That's the concept basically. Previously what happens, people were managing everything in one place and it is not logically separated. Now the processes can be logically separated. அதுதான் ஒரு அதுதான் பேசிக்கா ஜிகே தி Kubernetes concept. So you publish, you take a small piece of code and deploy it in a smaller piece of hardware, as it's all bundled together and deployed and executed with a smaller piece of hardware. புரியுதா? I mean, உங்களுக்கு
Yes, sir.
புரிஞ்சுதா கூபர்நெட்டிஸ்னா என்ன அப்படின்றது? ஸோ நான் ஒரு அந்த தான் அந்த லாகின் எக்ஸாம்பிளை கொடுத்தேன். ஸோ there are login dockers, docker images. There are account summary docker images. There are like the other email docker images. There are so many docker images working together to form a holistic enterprise application. So yeah. சொல்லுங்க. What somebody else also raised a question. You have do I see? So can you explain cloud providers ensure data security? Okay. So data security is not, if you look at the cloud data responsibility model, right? We saw that data security is not the provider's responsibility. Most of the time, we meaning client is responsible for maintaining the data security. So who is seeing what, who knows better about the data? So the data in the cloud are secured by encryption, right? So they use encryption keys to keep the data. Even if you take, so for you somebody stole the data from like a cloud provider, and then they cannot read it because it's encrypted with the client key, right? So there is a cloud data security. If you don't encrypt, like some people, they keep like unsecured data in a S3 bucket or regular storage, then then those things are not secured. But most of the sensitive data is secured using a security key. That security keys are client provided key, or it can be a centrally managed key using a cloud provider. So, and it is more often the responsibility of a client. It is not the provider responsibility. Data security on the cloud is the client responsibility. And like remaining all other things, how do we secure cloud? Like you have a perfect firewall setup, you have separate penetration rules, penetration check frequently, and then there are certain recommendations, and very often we go through that audit process. So that's keep looking for any loopholes, right? That previously all these virus scans they publish when they find out new viruses and new attacks and new things, right? Same thing, they also here also they like if there are something new coming in the market, new attacks, then there is the firewall rules are updated, and so nobody can get into the compound or VPC. That's the like, yeah. Can you talk about hybrid cloud computing? Yeah, hybrid cloud computing. So I was telling, like, about what is hybrid cloud, right? We saw public cloud, we saw private cloud, and then hybrid cloud and multi cloud. Hybrid cloud is a situation where private cloud and public clouds are used. And where is the need for that? What is IPO? We need to know what is private cloud and what is public cloud. Public cloud we know, and private cloud, there is, by definition, you need a separate hardware isolation. When I say hardware isolation, நான் வந்து இந்த கம்ப்யூட்டரை வந்து வேற யாரும் யூஸ் பண்ணக்கூடாது. If you have a server rack, and then that's dedicated only for, okay, federal agency like US defense department, அல்லது வேற ஏதாவது, all the most of the government departments, they don't want to put their data in the public cloud, right? And so they need a private cloud. And so private cloud, same way, the sensitive R&D development work happening in pharma companies or any other companies, they are, like, they are very, they don't want to go in public. I was giving you another example about LML also, right? Language model deployment. They don't want to use the openly available language models in public companies. I'm talking about, they wanted to make use of language models, but they wanted to make sure it runs in their data center. The queries, if I'm prompting, okay, you know about the prompts, right? And I write a prompt, hey, how do I fine tune my language model, or how do I fine tune my algorithm? If I put that in, then people will know. Normally நம்ம என்ன பண்ணுவோம், கூகுளில் போய் சர்ச் பண்ணோம், எனக்கு இந்த ப்ராப்ளம் இருக்குது அப்படின்ட்டு, அது ஸ்டாக் ஓவர்ஃப்ளோக்கு போவோம். So then people will know what you are searching for. Same way, companies, if they start asking such questions, companies meaning the developers or people working inside the company, if they start using, like questions like that to public, then it becomes an impact, right? The public will know, hey, these guys have a problem, looks like their product has some inefficiencies. So that's why they wanted to run in private, right? When you do it in a private cloud, the data is staying, the queries will not go outside the world, and it stays inside. You have a more security, and the data, the support is also available. The models are developed using your own data set, not on a publicly available data set. So the that's a hybrid cloud use case. So hybrid cloud is nothing but it's a combination of public and private cloud put together, working on certain sensitive use cases. Another question: what is penetration testing? Okay, so penetration testing is something like, we talked about the network setup, right? VPC setup, the whole, you have 1000 computer run ஆகுது உள்ளாடி, விபிசிக்கு உள்ளாடி, and with the different processes. Like நம்ம காலேஜ் எடுத்துக்கோங்களேன், we have several departments, we have several computers running together, but you have like a compound, right? You have a compound, and the compound, there is a gate, and there is the people, there is a security who's taking entry of who's coming, who's not, who's going out, who's coming in. And there are some people, like to jump over the compound wall, right? It's a similar thing in the like network setup, right? So penetration testing is, from externally, are they able to, can they come into our campus, or can they jump into our campus? Is there any weaknesses in any of the compound wall or any of the code we are running? Sometimes code may have, the code may malfunction, or code may have some, viruses or some. So what we do is we do scan the code before we deploy it, but still there may be several loopholes, possibilities. That's why we do a penetration testing. Penetration testing is we try to simulate the attack setup, right? You try to uh, simulate that setup, meaning how from outside you create multiple, ways, like of entering into the particular url, application url. you I'm not authorized to use that url, but can I get in? And so there are the penetration application, they do lot of combinations of tests. That's simulating the external attacks. It can be a virus attack, it can be a day, like somebody trying to grab your data. It can be of several nature, right? Yeah. As a beginner, what are the certifications we can do in cloud? That's why I was talking about, cloud engineer, which is a very easy thing. And a lot of people, if you see, like other career wise, the cloud have better salary. Even I was looking at the offshore, they give a good salary for if you are certified. I would recommend people to do certification while they are in the fourth year of college. Like you do, if if you finish your cloud certification, you will definitely get a good job. And not like like VB development, or like any other IT work. But if you finish your cloud certification, then you have a decent job. I see that, anywhere. We hire. I work for Accenture. All the major companies, Deloitte or any all the companies, they give preference for certified people. Okay, what is that? Going to cloud computing. What are the essential things to be taken by the users? So, meaning essential things to be taken by the users. So, before a customer, I think from the user, you are talking about the customer. Before a customer is moved to a cloud, what do they need to? They need to think like, how am I going to use the cloud, right? And how am I going to, why am, they need to be clear what services are giving me advantage, even though there are auto scales, or then the usage based model. Like usage based model, meaning like if you don't use it, you don't need to pay. Like நீங்களே cloud யூஸ் பண்ணலாம். இவங்களுக்கு வந்து தேவைன்னு படும்போது யூஸ் பண்ணிக்கலாம், தேவைப்படலைன்னா ஷட் டவுன் பண்ணிக்கலாம். அது மாதிரி. And there are like various things we do for customer who wants to come into cloud. We find out their use cases. We start with the use cases. If you are a big company, they go by எந்த application நீங்க வந்து முதல்ல cloud-க்கு கொண்டு போக விரும்புறீங்க, which use case, right? And is it like an R&D use case, or is it like analytical use case? And then what are the services you want to use? We analyze the use case and provide recommendation. என்ன யூஸ் கேஸ் அவங்க வேணுமோ அதுக்கேற்ற மாதிரி வந்து there are different cloud providers, right? அவங்களுடைய comparison, we give the comparison of different cloud providers. And then customer, they select one service or multiple services based on the need. So where essential, I don't think where they need to, all they need to know is what use case I'm going to do, what services I need in cloud. And yeah, what kind of cloud technologies we need to learn if we are looking to data engineering job. So data engineering is that database engineering. When you are looking at, so I had 2-3 slides about database engineer role. Yeah, that fits into this one, database engineering. So you need to know how do you bring in data, how do we push the data into storage, how do you do streaming data like pubsub, that is that's one of the way to capture the streaming data. And then how do you massage or how do you transform the data, and how do you build different pipelines. Data engineering எல்லாமே அதுதான் மெயினா வந்து how do you build different pipelines, populate the data, and then the visualization, then AIML, LLM are running on top of it. Like these are the areas for data engineering, right? என்ன மாதிரி என்ன டேட்டாபேஸ் வந்து இந்த அப்ளிகேஷனுக்கு சூட்டபிளா இருக்கும், இந்த யூஸ் கேஸ்க்கு சூட்டபிளா இருக்கும். இஸ் இட் அ ஸ்ட்ரக்சர்ட் டேட்டா, அன்ஸ்ட்ரக்சர்ட் டேட்டா, right? How am I going to use it? Like oh, so structured data now one type of this one is it transactional data or analytical data. So the based on that you decide what database you need or what database service you need, and then you manage it, and you allow the data scientists to allow them to run the data, AIML models, and then they produce the results for the company. The end users are your analyst, data analyst, and database data scientists. They are the people who are using data engineering work. So, data engineering மெயினா வந்து தேவை database engineer certification. If you are want to be a data engineering is always like um, there are always a demand for data engineering. You need to know Python minimum, bare minimum. You need to know by Python. If you know Java, that is a plus. There are so many other data engineering this technologies also. Spark is one, like they use Spark technologies in the unstructured world. So there but if you want to become a data engineer, please learn Python. Okay, that's important. Okay. um, I think we have addressed about all the questions, and I think I'm really happy to share at least my my 2 cents with our like juniors. And this is the first time I'm doing a session, and I'm happy to help you guys. Okay, in case of any help you need, let me know. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, sir. Uh, Good evening, all. I would like to thank our beloved alumni, Mr. Stephen Alex. Thank you so much, sir, for sharing informative insights through this webinar. Also, I would like to thank our faculty members and students for their kind cooperation to make this event successful. Once again, I convey my gratitude to all present here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your time.
Bye.
I hope it's an interactive session.